The first time I met Grace Whitmore, I knew something was off. It was a crisp October evening 8 months ago. I'd spent the entire day preparing for her arrival at my farmhouse just outside Portland. The roasted chicken was golden brown, the apple pie cooling on the windowsill, and the table was set with my mother-in-law's china, the only fancy thing I owned. I wanted everything to be perfect for my son's girlfriend. Andrew had been talking about Grace for 3 months. "She's amazing, Mom," he'd say during our Sunday phone calls. "Smart, ambitious, beautiful. I really think she's the one." My heart had swelled with happiness for him. After everything we'd been through, after losing his father when he was just 5 years old, after all those years of struggle, my boy had finally found someone to share his life with. I should have known it wouldn't be that simple. Grace arrived in a silver BMW, stepping out in a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my monthly electric bill. She was beautiful, I'll give her that. Blonde hair, perfectly styled makeup, flawless designer purse dangling from her arm. "Mrs. Mitchell," she'd called out, her voice bright and cheerful. "It's so wonderful to finally meet you." She'd approached me with arms extended, and I'd noticed her heels sinking slightly into the soft earth of my driveway. For just a moment, her smile had faltered as she glanced down at the mud. But then she recovered, hugging me with what seemed like genuine warmth. "Please call me Ava," I'd said, returning the embrace. That's when I felt it. The subtle way her hands barely touched my back. The way she stepped back just a bit too quickly. And then I saw it, her hand reaching discreetly into her purse, pulling out hand sanitizer. She thought I hadn't noticed. I had. But I'd pushed the thought away, telling myself I was being paranoid. Maybe she was just particular about hygiene. Maybe I was reading too much into it. The dinner had gone well enough. Grace complimented everything, the food, the house, the garden, visible through the window. But there was something about the way she said, "What a quaint little place," that made my stomach twist. The word quaint felt like a knife wrapped in silk. Andrew had been oblivious, beaming as he watched his mother and girlfriend chat. He'd reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "See, Mom, I told you you'd love each other." I'd smiled and nodded, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Grace was performing rather than being genuine. Now 8 months later, as I stood at my booth at the Portland Farmers Market at 5 in the morning arranging my organic produce and homemade preserves, I realized my instincts had been right all along. The morning air was cool, and the market was just beginning to wake up. Around me, other vendors were setting up their stalls, Eleanor with her artisan cheeses, Marcus with his fresh-baked bread, Sarah with her flower arrangements. This had been my life for 23 years. After John died in that car accident, leaving me with a 5-year-old boy and mountains of debt, I'd had to find a way to survive. The life insurance payout had been minimal. There were no savings to fall back on. So I'd taught myself organic farming. I'd started small, a vegetable garden in my backyard that grew bigger each year. I'd learned to make preserves and jams, to grow herbs and flowers. I'd rented this booth at the market and worked 16-hour days to make ends meet. People thought I was poor. I let them think it. The truth was more complicated. "Morning, Ava," Eleanor called from the next booth over. She was 60 like me, with silver hair she wore in a long braid and laugh lines that crinkled around her eyes. "You look tired, honey. Everything okay?" I arranged the last of my tomatoes before answering. "Just didn't sleep well." "Wedding stress?" she asked knowingly. Before I could respond, my iPhone buzzed in my apron pocket. I pulled it out, my hands still smelling like earth and basil. It was a text from Grace. "Mom, Ava, we need to talk. It's important. Call me tonight." My stomach dropped. Eleanor must have seen something in my face because she frowned. "What is it?" "I'm not sure yet," I said quietly. "But I have a feeling I'm about to find out." The rest of the morning passed in a blur. I sold tomatoes and cucumbers to regular customers, chatted about the weather, gave recipe suggestions for my strawberry preserves. But my mind was elsewhere. "We need to talk. It's important." Those words never led to anything good. That evening at exactly 7 o'clock, my phone rang. FaceTime call from Andrew. I set down the dish towel I'd been using and wiped my hands on my jeans. My farmhouse kitchen was small but cozy, with herbs drying by the window and the lingering smell of the bread I'd baked that afternoon. I accepted the call. Andrew's face appeared on screen, but something was wrong. He wasn't smiling. Behind him, I could see the sleek, modern interior of the condo he shared with Grace in the Pearl District, all white walls and stainless steel. "Hi, Mom," he said, his voice oddly flat. "Hey, sweetie, is everything—" Grace wants to talk to you, he interrupted, and then his face disappeared as the phone was passed to someone else. Grace appeared on screen, sitting on what looked like an expensive leather sofa. Behind her, I could see a wall of wine bottles, one of those fancy temperature-controlled displays. "Mom, Ava," she said brightly, too brightly. "Thanks so much for making time to chat." "Of course, dear. What did you want to discuss?" Grace's smile remained fixed, but her eyes betrayed her nervousness. "Well, as you know, the wedding is coming up so quickly, just 6 weeks away now. Can you believe it?" "It's very exciting," I said carefully. "Yes, and Andrew and I have been working so hard with the wedding planner to make sure everything is absolutely perfect." She paused, tucking a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. "That's actually what I wanted to talk about." My grip on the phone tightened. "We've decided to do something really special," Grace continued. "Something different from the traditional wedding. We've hired this amazing celebrity wedding planner. She's done weddings for tech CEOs and local celebrities, and we've booked the rooftop at the Nines Hotel downtown." "That sounds lovely," I said, though my heart was beginning to race. "It does, doesn't it?" Grace's laugh was high and brittle. "The thing is, it's going to be quite a formal affair, very high profile. Andrew's company's CEO will be there, all our work colleagues, some venture capitalists who are interested in Andrew's startup." She trailed off, and I waited. "Mom, Ava, we want you to have the best possible experience," Grace said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "You've worked so hard your whole life. You deserve to enjoy the wedding without any stress or pressure." "What are you saying, Grace?" Behind Grace, I saw Andrew lean into frame slightly, his face pale, but he said nothing. Grace took a deep breath. "We think it might be more comfortable for you to skip the formal ceremony and reception. Instead, we're planning a lovely, intimate family brunch the next morning. Just immediate family. Much more relaxed, more your style." The words hung in the air like poison. "You don't want me at the wedding?" I said quietly. It's not like that," Grace stammered, her composure cracking slightly. "It's just that the environment will be very formal, very social. Lots of networking, champagne toasts, dancing. We thought you might feel out of place. We're trying to be considerate." "Considerate?" I repeated, my voice hollow. "Yes, exactly." Grace brightened, apparently missing the edge in my tone. "The brunch will be so much nicer for you. No pressure to dress up or make small talk with strangers. Just good food and family time." My hands were shaking. I set the phone down on the counter so Grace wouldn't see. "And Andrew agrees with this plan?" I asked, though I could see my son in the background, unable to meet my eyes through the screen. "We both think it's for the best," Grace said firmly. "I see." I picked the phone back up. "Grace, can I speak to Andrew, please?" Grace hesitated. "He's actually about to hop into a meeting. Now, please." Something in my tone must have conveyed that I wouldn't take no for an answer. Grace's mouth tightened into a thin line, but she handed the phone to Andrew. My son's face filled the screen. He looked miserable. "Mom, did you agree to this?" I asked quietly. Andrew's eyes darted away from the camera. I think Grace has a point. The wedding is going to be really overwhelming, and I know you're not comfortable in those kinds of social situations." "That's not what I asked." My voice was steel now. "Did you agree to exclude your mother from your wedding?" The silence stretched between us. Finally, Andrew whispered, "Yes." The word hit me like a physical blow. "I see," I said again. "Thank you for being honest. Mom, please understand." "I need to go, Andrew. We'll talk later." I ended the call before he could respond. For a long moment, I stood frozen in my kitchen, staring at the blank screen of my phone. Around me, my farmhouse felt impossibly quiet. The bread I'd baked sat cooling on the rack. The herbs swayed gently in the evening breeze coming through the open window. Everything looked exactly the same as it had an hour ago. But everything had changed. My son didn't want me at his wedding. I sank into one of the kitchen chairs, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. The phone slipped from my hand and clattered onto the wooden table. I'd worked so hard, sacrificed so much, raised him alone, worked 16-hour days, went without so he could have what he needed. Put him through college, cheered at his graduation, celebrated every success. And now he was ashamed of me. No, it wasn't Andrew. Not really. It was Grace. Grace who thought I wasn't good enough. Grace who was embarrassed by the farmer's market vendor who raised the man she claimed to love. The tears came then hot and bitter. I don't know how long I sat there crying, but eventually the tears stopped. The sun had set outside my window, and the kitchen had grown dark. I didn't turn on the lights. Instead, I sat in the darkness and made a decision. I would go to that wedding whether they wanted me there or not. 3 days after the phone call, Grace's mother insisted on taking everyone to dinner. Victoria Whitmore had suggested Le Pigeon, one of Portland's Michelin-starred restaurants, the kind of place where a single meal cost more than I typically spent on groceries in a week. I'd tried to decline, but Andrew had called and practically begged me to come. "Please, Mom," he'd said, his voice strained. "Victoria really wants to meet you properly. Grace thinks if our mothers get to know each other better, everything will be easier." Easier. As if that phone call had never happened. As if my exclusion from the wedding was just a minor misunderstanding that could be smoothed over with a nice dinner. But I'd agreed to go, partly because Andrew sounded so desperate, and partly because I wanted to see Victoria Whitmore with my own eyes. I'd chosen my outfit carefully, a simple navy dress I'd bought at Nordstrom Rack 3 years ago, paired with the pearl necklace that had belonged to John's mother. It was the nicest thing I owned. It still wasn't nice enough. Le Pigeon was everything I'd expected, dimly lit intimate with tables so close together you could hear your neighbors' conversations. The menu was in French. There were no prices listed. I'd arrived exactly on time and found Andrew waiting outside. "Mom," he'd hugged me tightly, holding on perhaps a moment too long. "You look beautiful." "Thank you, sweetie." I'd pulled back to look at him. "Are you okay? You look tired." "I'm fine. Just a lot going on with the wedding planning and work and—" He'd trailed off, running a hand through his hair, a gesture he'd done since he was a little boy when he was stressed. Before I could press him further, a silver Mercedes pulled up to the curb. Grace stepped out first, wearing a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than my car payment. Then came Victoria. Victoria Whitmore was everything I'd imagined, and worse. She was 55, but looked 40 thanks to what I suspected was excellent plastic surgery. Her blonde hair was styled in perfect waves. She wore a cream-colored suit that screamed wealth and carried a Hermes Birkin bag that I knew cost upwards of $10,000. I'd seen enough Real Housewives reruns at Eleanor's house to recognize luxury when I saw it. "Ava," Victoria swept toward me, air-kissing both my cheeks without actually making contact. "How absolutely delightful to finally meet you." "It's nice to meet you too, Victoria. Please call me Vicky. All my friends do." She linked her arm through mine as we walked into the restaurant. "Grace has told me so much about you. The farmer's market, your little farmhouse. It all sounds so wonderfully authentic." The word authentic sounded like an insult wrapped in a compliment. We were seated at a corner table. I found myself between Andrew and Victoria with Grace across from me. A server immediately appeared with champagne. "We're celebrating," Victoria announced. "My baby girl is getting married." We toasted. The champagne was dry and expensive. I took a small sip. "So Ava," Victoria said, turning to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Andrew tells me you work at the farmer's market. How charming." "I've been there for 23 years, I said evenly. "I grow organic produce and make preserves." "How absolutely delightful it must be, so fulfilling to work with your hands." Victoria sipped her champagne. "I must confess I could never do physical labor. I have such terrible back problems. And my manicurist would simply die if I showed up with dirt under my nails." She laughed, a tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. Grace shot her mother a warning look, but Victoria continued undeterred. "And you still live in that farmhouse where Andrew grew up, outside the city?" "Yes. It's been my home for 30 years. "How charmingly rustic." Victoria signaled the waiter for more champagne. "I'm sure it must be quite remote out there. Do you even have decent internet access?" "Mother," Grace said quietly. But Victoria was just getting started. Throughout dinner, through the appetizers of foie gras and the main course of duck confit that I barely tasted, Victoria peppered me with questions designed to highlight the differences between us. How much land did I have? 25 acres, but it sounded small the way she said it. Did I have help with the farm? No, I did everything myself. What did I do for fun? I mostly worked. Did I travel? Not really, no. Each question felt like a tiny cut. And through it all, Grace sat silent occasionally, meeting my eyes with what might have been guilt, but doing nothing to stop her mother. Andrew tried to deflect. "Mrs. Whitmore, my mom's organic produce is sold in 15 restaurants around Portland. She's built an incredible business from nothing." How impressive, Victoria interrupted her tone, suggesting it was anything but. You know, Ava, I respect hard work. I built Whitmore Properties from the ground up. Of course, I had advantages, good education, family connections, startup capital, but still, it took dedication. She paused to butter a piece of bread. It must have been so difficult for you raising Andrew alone. No education, no money, no support. How did you manage government assistance? The question was designed to humiliate me. I worked, I said simply. I did what I had to do to provide for my son. Admirable, Victoria said in a tone that suggested it was anything but. Truly admirable. Grace and I were just saying the other day how we admire people who are content with simpler lives. That's when I excused myself to use the restroom. I needed a moment away from that table, away from Victoria's subtle cruelty and Grace's silent complicity and Andrew's helpless attempts to defend me. The ladies' room at Le Pigeon was as elegant as the rest of the restaurant: marble countertops, expensive soap-cloth hand towels. I stood at the sink, gripping the cool marble, trying to compose myself. I just turned on the faucet when I heard voices, women's voices coming from one of the stalls. Sure about this, Grace? His mother is... It was Victoria. I froze. I know, Mother. That was Grace, her voice tight with stress. But I love Andrew. And it's not like we'll have to deal with her much after the wedding. You've already taken care of the guest list issue. Yes, Andrew agreed. She'll come to the brunch the next day instead. Good. I cannot have that woman at the Nines looking like she just came in from milking cows. The Portland Business Journal is sending a photographer. My clients will be there. I know. And after the wedding, you're still planning to move to Seattle for Andrew's new job. Yes, 3 hours away. We'll visit on major holidays. It'll be fine. My hand gripped the edge of the sink so hard my knuckles went white. I just don't understand what Andrew sees in you that makes him willing to overlook his background. Victoria's voice dripped with disdain. Mother, please. You're being cruel. I'm being practical, darling. You're marrying down. Way down. The only reason I'm agreeing to help fund Andrew's little startup is because I know it will tie him to you. And to us. Money talks. There was the sound of a toilet flushing. I quickly turned on the faucet and pretended to wash my hands as Victoria and Grace emerged from the stall. We locked eyes in the mirror. For one long moment, nobody moved. Victoria recovered first. Oh, Ava, we didn't realize you were here. Obviously, I said quietly. Grace's face had gone pale. Ava, It's fine, I interrupted, my voice surprisingly steady despite the way my heart was hammering. I understand completely. I dried my hands carefully on the cloth towel, taking my time. Then I looked Victoria straight in the eye. You know, Victoria, you're right about one thing. I did raise my son with nothing. No money, no connections, no advantages. I set down the towel. But I raised him with love, with values, with the understanding that a person's worth isn't measured by their bank account or their social status. I turned to Grace now. And you, Grace. I hope you understand what you're getting in Andrew, not because of his potential startup or his future earnings or what he can do for your social climbing, but because he's kind and decent and good. I moved toward the door, then paused. I'll be at the wedding, whether you like it or not, because I'm his mother, and no amount of money or status or Hermes bags will ever change that. I walked out, leaving them both frozen in shock. Back at the table, I placed my cloth napkin beside my plate. Andrew, I'm not feeling well. I'm going to head home. Mom, wait. He started to stand. Stay. Finish your meal. We'll talk tomorrow. I walked out of Le Pigeon with my head held high, though inside I was shaking. I'd just thrown down the gauntlet. Now I needed a plan. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my farmhouse living room, wrapped in one of John's old flannel shirts that still hung in the closet after all these years. Outside my window, the Oregon darkness was complete. No streetlights out here, just stars and silence. My phone had rung 6 times. Andrew calling. I'd let it go to voicemail. Around midnight, a text came through. Mom, please. Let me explain. I love you. Call me back. I didn't respond. Instead, I sat in the darkness and let myself remember. The memories came in waves, each one more painful than the last. Andrew at 5 years old, standing beside me at John's funeral, his little hand gripping mine so tightly. Is Daddy coming back, Mommy? No, sweetheart, but we're going to be okay, I promise. Andrew at 8, helping me at the farmer's market on Saturday mornings. Other kids his age were at soccer practice or birthday parties. My son was learning how to make change and bag vegetables. I remembered the day Tommy Wilson had called him Farmer Boy at school. Andrew had come home with a black eye and tears streaming down his face. "I hate it," he'd sobbed into my shoulder. "I hate being different. Why can't we be normal like other families?" I'd held him and stroked his hair and told him that different didn't mean less, that there was honor in hard work, that his father would be proud. Andrew at 14, smart enough to get into a gifted program, but knowing we couldn't afford it. "It's okay, Mom," he'd said, trying to be brave. "The regular school is fine." But I'd seen the disappointment in his eyes. I'd sold the last piece of jewelry I owned, my grandmother's diamond ring, and paid for that program. Andrew never knew. Andrew at 18 opening his acceptance letter to Oregon State University. "I got in, Mom, I got in." We danced around the kitchen, both of us crying with joy. That night after Andrew had gone to bed, I'd looked at the tuition bill and felt my stomach drop. Even with his partial scholarship, I'd need to come up with $30,000. Money I didn't have. So I'd worked. God, how I'd worked. I took a second job at a local cannery working the night shift. I sold everything that wasn't essential. I took out a small loan. I skipped meals and patched my clothes and drove a car held together with duct tape and prayer. But Andrew graduated debt-free. He never knew how many meals I'd missed, how many times I'd chosen between groceries and the electric bill, how I'd rationed my blood pressure medication to make it last longer because I couldn't afford the refills. I'd done it gladly, because he was my son, my miracle, the best thing John and I had ever created. And now that boy, now a man, had chosen a startup investment over me. The tears came again, harder this time. I curled up on the couch, hugging John's shirt to my chest, and let myself break. "John," I whispered to the darkness. "What do I do? How did we get here?" But John was 23 years gone. There was no answer. Eventually, exhaustion dragged me under. I fell asleep on the couch as dawn began to break over my land. I woke to knocking. Disoriented, I stumbled to the door. The morning sun was already high. I'd slept later than I had in years. Eleanor stood on my porch, holding a basket. "You look like hell," she said bluntly, pushing past me into the house. "Good morning to you, too." Eleanor set the basket on my kitchen table. I could see fresh bread, cheese, fruit. "When you didn't show up at the market this morning, I got worried. You've never missed a Saturday in 20 years. I'd completely forgotten. The market, my booth, the customers who depended on me. "I'm sorry I—" "Sit," Eleanor commanded, already putting on my kettle. "And talk." So I did. I told her everything. The phone call, the dinner, Victoria and Grace's conversation in the bathroom, Andrew's betrayal. By the time I finished, Eleanor's face was flushed with anger. "That privileged little brat!" she exploded. "How dare she and Victoria? Oh, that woman needs a reality check." "Eleanor, no." My friend stood pacing my small kitchen. "You've been nothing but kind and generous to that girl. You welcomed her into your family, and this is how she repays you." "Andrew agreed to it," I said quietly. "That's the part that hurts the most." Eleanor stopped pacing and looked at me with such tenderness it made my eyes burn. "Oh, honey." She sat down next to me, taking my hands. "Your boy is making a mistake, a huge one, but he's being manipulated. He's 28 years old enough to make his own choices, and old enough to face the consequences of those choices." We sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the whistling of the kettle. Then Eleanor said carefully, "You know, I've heard rumors about the Whitmores." I looked up sharply. "What kind of rumors about Victoria? Apparently she wasn't always Victoria Whitmore. Someone at the cheese co-op mentioned that she changed her name years ago, that she came from nothing just like the rest of us." "Are you sure?" Eleanor shrugged. "It's just gossip. But if it's true, makes you wonder why she's so desperate to look down on you, doesn't it?" After Eleanor left, I stood in my kitchen for a long time thinking. Then I walked to my bedroom and opened the closet. Way in the back, hidden under winter blankets, was a metal lockbox. I pulled it out and opened it with the key I kept on a chain around my neck. Inside were documents I hadn't looked at in years. The property deed to my farmhouse and land fully paid off. I'd made the final mortgage payment 3 years ago. Stock certificates. Apple bought in 2005 when it was $5 a share. Microsoft. Amazon. Small investments over the years whenever I could scrape together a few $100s. And bank statements. I'd been careful. So careful. Every extra penny had gone into savings or investments. I'd lived like I was poor even when I wasn't anymore, because I never knew when I might need that cushion, when Andrew might need it. The current balance made me blink $1.8 million in stocks and mutual funds. Another $500,000 in savings accounts. The property was worth at least $1.2 million now, thanks to Portland's real estate boom. Total assets approximately $3.5 million. I wasn't rich. Not really, not by Victoria Whitmore's standards, but I was far from the destitute farmer they thought I was. I looked at these papers, proof of years of sacrifice and smart planning and careful investments, and made my decision. Grace wanted to exclude me because she thought I wasn't good enough. Thought I would embarrass her in front of her wealthy friends. Fine, I'd show her exactly who I was. But first I needed information, and I needed help. I picked up my phone and made 2 calls. The first was to Patricia O'Brien Patty, we called her. She'd been part of the Farmers Co-op years ago before she left to become an investigative journalist. We'd stayed friends. "Patty," I said when she answered, "I need a favor. I need you to look into someone for me. Ava, is everything okay?" "Not really, but it will be." The second call was harder. Andrew answered on the first ring. "Mom, thank God, I've been trying to reach you. I know, I need to see you. Can you come to the farm tomorrow alone?" "Of course. But Mom, about dinner the other night." "Tomorrow," I repeated. "We'll talk then." After I hung up, I sat on my bed surrounded by the documents that proved I was worth more than anyone knew, and I started to plan. The next morning, Andrew arrived at 9 o'clock exactly. He looked terrible circles under his eyes, his hair uncombed, his shirt wrinkled. I made coffee while he sat at my kitchen table, the same table where he'd done his homework as a child. "Mom, I'm so sorry," he said before I could speak. "The way Victoria talked to you at dinner was unacceptable, and I should have defended you better." "Yes, you should have." He flinched. I never used that tone with him. "The thing is," I continued pouring coffee into 2 mugs, "defending me at dinner wasn't the problem, Andrew. Not really." "Then what?" "The problem is that you agreed to exclude me from your wedding." I set his coffee in front of him but remained standing. "You agreed with Grace that your own mother isn't good enough to be seen at your big day." "That's not—" He stopped, ran his hands through his hair. "Mom, it's complicated. Explain it to me. Make me understand how my son, the boy I raised alone, the boy I sacrificed everything for, decided I'm an embarrassment." "You're not an embarrassment." Andrew stood agitated. "That's not what this is about." "Then what is it about?" He paced my small kitchen, looking everywhere but at me. "Victoria's company is investing in my startup," he finally said. $500,000. The contract isn't signed yet. It's contingent on certain conditions. My blood ran cold. "What conditions?" "She wants to make sure I'm committed to success, that I'm willing to make tough choices, that I won't be distracted by personal matters." "Personal matters? You mean me?" Andrew's silence was answer enough. "So let me understand this," I said slowly. "Victoria Whitmore is essentially buying my silence, buying my absence from my own son's life, and you're letting her." "It's not like that." "That's exactly what it's like." My voice rose despite my best efforts to stay calm. "You're selling me out for $500,000. Mom, this startup is my dream. It's everything I've worked for." "Do you know what I gave up for you?" I interrupted. "Do you have any idea?" Andrew stopped pacing. "Of course I do. You've reminded me my entire life." "No!" The word came out sharp as a slap. "You don't. You have no idea." I walked to my bedroom and came back with the metal box. I set it on the table between us and opened it. "This is the deed to this house. Paid in full. Do you know how I paid it off? I worked double shifts at the cannery for 3 years. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to feel guilty. I pulled out the stock certificates. These are stocks I bought a little at a time whenever I could spare $50 or $100. Do you know how many meals I skipped to buy these? How many times I wore clothes with holes in them? How many times I couldn't afford my medications?" Andrew's face had gone white. "And this," I showed him the bank statements, "is what those sacrifices added up to. I'm worth about $3.5 million, Andrew. Your poor farmer mother is a millionaire." He stared at the papers, speechless. I was saving it all for you, I continued, my voice breaking now. For your future, for your children, for whatever you might need. I lived poor so you could have security. Tears were streaming down Andrew's face. And now you're telling me that I'm not worth the risk of losing Victoria's investment, that $500,000 is more valuable than having your mother at your wedding. Mom, I didn't know. You should have known. I slammed my hand on the table, making the coffee cups jump. You should have known that I would walk through fire for you, that I did walk through fire for you, and you should have had enough faith in me to stand up to Grace and her mother. I'm sorry, Andrew sobbed. I'm so sorry, you're right. I was weak. I was stupid. I just wanted everything to work out. The wedding, the business, keeping everyone happy. I thought I could make it all fit together if I just compromised. You compromised the wrong thing, son. We stood there in my kitchen, me with my arms crossed, Andrew crying into his hands. Finally, I said, you need to decide who you are, Andrew, the man I raised you to be, or the man Grace and Victoria want you to become. I want to be the man you raised, he said fiercely. I do, but I don't know how to fix this. If I go against Victoria now, she'll pull the funding. Everything will fall apart. I thought about telling him I could fund his startup myself, that my $3.5 million could do more than Victoria's investment. But I didn't, because Andrew needed to figure this out on his own. He needed to decide what mattered more, money or integrity. Then you have a choice to make, I said instead, and you need to make it soon. The wedding is in 5 weeks. Andrew looked at me with red, swollen eyes. Will you come to the wedding, even if Grace doesn't want you there? I thought about it for a long moment. Yes, I finally said. I'll be there, because I'm your mother, and nothing, not Grace, not Victoria, not $500,000 will keep me away. Relief flooded his face. Thank you. Thank you, Mom. I promise I'll fix this. I'll talk to Grace. I'll make her understand. Don't make promises you can't keep, Andrew. He left shortly after that, his shoulders hunched like he was carrying the weight of the world. I watched him drive away, then picked up my phone. Patty had texted earlier. Found something interesting about the Whitmores. Call me. I dialed her number. Ava, Patty answered immediately. You're going to want to hear this. Grace Whitmore. That's not her real name. What her birth name was Grace Victoria Palmer. Changed it legally when she was 22. And get this, her father, Douglas Palmer, was convicted of embezzlement. Spent 5 years in federal prison. Wiped out the family's money and reputation. My mind was racing. And Victoria also changed her name. She was Vicky Palmer. After the husband went to prison, she and Grace were destitute, living in a trailer park in Gresham. Victoria worked 3 jobs, including as a cleaning lady, to put Grace through school on scholarship. They were poor, I said slowly. Dirt poor. For years. Victoria only managed to pull herself up after she married briefly a real estate developer named Michael Whitmore. Marriage lasted 2 years, but she kept the name and used his connections to start her own company. That was 20 years ago. I was stunned. So Grace grew up poor, just like Andrew. Exactly like Andrew. There's more. I found some old photos from the Portland Rescue Mission archives. They did a profile on local volunteers back in 2013. Grace is in several photos she volunteered there serving food when she was in high school. Send me those photos, I said immediately. Already did. Check your email. I opened my laptop and there they were. A teenage Grace, maybe 16, wearing simple clothes, her hair in a ponytail, smiling as she served food to people in need. In one photo, she was handing a tray to a young girl, and in the background, partially obscured, was a woman in a volunteer apron. I zoomed in on the woman's face. It was me. I'd volunteered at the Portland Rescue Mission for 3 years, from 2007 to 2010. I'd completely forgotten about it. It had been so long ago, and I'd been so busy with work and raising Andrew. But I'd been there, at the same mission, at the same time as young Grace Palmer. Had we crossed paths? Had I served her food, the way I'd served hundreds of hungry people over those 3 years? I couldn't remember specifically. But it was possible. More than possible. Grace had grown up hungry. She'd stood in line at a soup kitchen. She'd worn donated clothes and lived in a trailer. And now she was so desperate to hide that past that she couldn't bear to have me at her wedding, because I reminded her of everything she was trying to forget. I understood her better now, but understanding didn't mean I'd let her treat me this way. I pulled up a new browser window and started making plans. First, I needed to secure tickets to Portland Business Journal's photographer at the Nines. If they were covering the wedding, it would be easy enough to add myself to the guest list through the right channels. Second, I needed an ally who would be there, someone Victoria and Grace would have to respect. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hello? Mrs. Mitchell, this is Alexander Thompson. I don't know if you remember me. And just like that, the final piece of my plan fell into place. Mrs. Mitchell, the voice on the phone repeated. This is Alexander Thompson. You might not remember me, but 22 years ago you saved my life. I gripped the phone tighter, my mind racing. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place it. I'm sorry, I don't... Winter of 2003, Portland Rescue Mission. I was 23, homeless, living in Pioneer Square. You gave me food every Saturday for 6 months. You never asked questions. You just helped. And suddenly I remembered. A skinny young man with hollow eyes and shaking hands. He'd come to the mission every Saturday, always sitting alone in the corner. I'd made sure he got extra portions. Had sat with him sometimes just talking about nothing important. Then one day he'd stopped coming. I'd hoped that meant he'd found his way out. Alex, I breathed. Oh my God, you're alive. Thanks to you. His voice was thick with emotion. Mrs. Mitchell, you gave me more than food. You gave me hope. You treated me like a human being when everyone else looked through me like I was invisible. I just did what anyone would do. No, he interrupted firmly. You did what almost nobody does. You saw me. You cared. And when I finally got clean and went to rehab, you gave me $500 from your own pocket. Do you remember that? I did. Vaguely. He'd come to my house one day looking healthier, saying he'd been accepted to a treatment program but couldn't afford the intake fee. I'd given him what I could spare. It had meant skipping my own prescriptions that month. That money changed my life, Alex continued. I got clean, got my GED, worked my way through community college, then Oregon State. Started a small tech consulting business that grew into Thompson Tech Solutions. Thompson Tech, I repeated, stunned. The billion-dollar company. The same. Mrs. Mitchell, I've been trying to find you for 10 years. The mission's records were incomplete. But last week I was at the Portland Farmers Market with my daughter. She wanted fresh strawberries, and I saw your booth. I saw your name. Ava Mitchell. He paused. I walked past 3 times before I got the courage to approach. But then you were busy with customers, and I left. I'm a coward, apparently. Why are you calling now? I asked. Because yesterday I received a wedding invitation to the Mitchell-Whitmore wedding. Andrew Mitchell and Grace Whitmore. I did some research and realized Andrew is your son. Grace works in my marketing department. My heart was pounding. You know Grace? I know of her. We have 200 employees. But yes, I'll be at that wedding. I'm considered a VIP client. He cleared his throat. Mrs. Mitchell, I heard through the office grapevine that there's been some tension between you and the bride. I laughed bitterly. That's one way to put it. Tell me what's happening, please. So I did. For the second time that day, I told the whole story. The exclusion, the cruel dinner, Victoria's manipulation, Andrew's choice. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then Alex said, his voice cold as steel, "That's unacceptable. It is what it is. No, Mrs. Mitchell, I won't stand by and watch someone treat you this way. Not after what you did for me." He paused. I'll be at that wedding, and I think it's time Grace Whitmore learned who you really are. Alex, I don't want you to jeopardize your business relationship. I'm the CEO, he said simply. I decide what relationships matter, and you matter more than any employee ever will. Something in my chest loosened. An ally. I had an ally. There's something else, I said slowly. My friend did some research. Grace, she wasn't always Grace Whitmore. She grew up poor, really poor. Her father went to prison for embezzlement. She and Victoria lived in a trailer park. You think she's ashamed of her past? I know she is. She changed her name to hide it. And now she's so desperate to fit in with Portland's elite that she can't stand having me around because I remind her of who she used to be. Alex was quiet for a moment. That explains a lot. She's always been overly concerned with image at the office. Always networking with the wealthy clients, always dressed expensively. There's more, I said. I volunteer at the Portland Rescue Mission years ago, the same time Grace did. I think I might have served her food when she was a teenager. I don't remember specifically, but the timeline matches. Jesus, Alex breathed. So you helped her too, and now she's trying to exclude you. People forget where they came from sometimes, or they're too ashamed to remember. Alex's voice hardened. Mrs. Mitchell, will you let me help you? I have an idea, but I'll need your permission. What kind of idea? The kind that reminds everyone, including Grace, what really matters in life. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to handle this alone, but another part, the part that was tired and hurt and angry, wanted to accept help. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Patty sent me everything she'd found about Grace's past, old yearbook photos, newspaper clippings about her father's trial records from the trailer park where she'd lived. I studied them like I was preparing for an exam. Alex called every few days with updates. He'd arranged for me to be added to the official guest list as his +1. Grace's assistant had processed it without question. Apparently, CEO requests weren't questioned. But even with these preparations, I wasn't sleeping well. Every night I lay awake in my farmhouse, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was doing the right thing. Part of me wanted to just let it go, to skip the weddings reserve, the peace, pretend everything was fine. But every time I considered backing down, I remembered Victoria's words in that restaurant bathroom. I cannot have that woman at the Nines looking like she just came in from milking cows. I remembered Grace's voice. It's not like we'll have to deal with her much after the wedding. I remembered Andrew's face when he admitted he'd chosen money over me. No, I wouldn't back down. It was Eleanor who finally helped me sort through my feelings. We were at the farmer's market one Saturday during a rare, slow period. The spring air was warm, and the smell of fresh bread from Marcus's booth wafted over us. You've been distracted lately, Eleanor said, not looking at me as she arranged her cheese display. Want to talk about it? I'm planning to confront Grace at the wedding, I admitted. In front of everyone. Eleanor's hands stilled. Are you sure that's what you want? No, but it's what needs to happen. There's a difference between standing up for yourself and seeking revenge, Ava. I turned to face her. You think that's what this is, revenge? I think you're hurt, rightfully so, but I also think you need to be clear about your intentions. Eleanor's eyes were kind but serious. Are you doing this to teach Grace a lesson? Or are you doing it to punish her? The question hit me hard. I don't know, I admitted quietly. Then figure it out, because the difference matters. One leads to growth and healing, the other just leads to more pain. That conversation haunted me for days. Was I seeking revenge or justice, or just recognition? I finally had my answer late one night while looking through old photo albums. There was Andrew at 5, grinning with his front teeth missing. Andrew at 10, proudly holding his first-place science fair ribbon. Andrew at 18, in his cap and gown, his arm around my shoulders. In every photo, he looked at me with love and trust. I wanted that back. Not revenge, not punishment. Just my son. The relationship we'd had before Grace and Victoria and money got in the way. And if confronting Grace publicly was what it took to wake Andrew up, then that's what I'd do. I picked up my phone and texted Alex. I'm ready. Let's do this. His response came immediately. I'll take care of everything. Trust me. The week before the wedding, Andrew came to visit. He'd been calling regularly since our last confrontation, but I'd kept the conversations short. Polite, but distant. He knew I was still hurt. This time he showed up unannounced on a Wednesday evening. I was in my garden pulling weeds when his car pulled into the driveway. Mom, he called, walking toward me. Can we talk? I stood wiping dirt from my hands onto my jeans. Of course. We sat on my back porch looking out over the farmland as the sun began to set. For a while neither of us spoke. Finally Andrew said, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about choosing who I want to be. I waited. I talked to Grace, told her I wanted you at the wedding, in the main ceremony, not some separate brunch. My heart leaped. And she agreed, sort of. He ran his hand through his hair, that nervous gesture again. You're on the guest list now, but she asked if you could sit toward the back, away from the VIP section. She said it's because of the photographer and the seating arrangements, and she still doesn't want me visible. I finished. She's trying, Mom. This is hard for her, too. Hard for her. I couldn't keep the anger from my voice. Andrew, do you hear yourself? I know it sounds bad, but you have to understand Grace has been through a lot. Her father destroyed their family. She spent her whole life trying to build something better. This wedding, it represents everything she's worked for. And I represent everything she's trying to forget. Andrew's silence was answer enough. I took a deep breath, fighting to stay calm. Let me ask you something. When you look at Grace, do you see a partner or do you see a project? What do you mean? You keep making excuses for her behavior. You keep explaining why she does hurtful things, as if understanding her motivations makes them okay. But understanding and accepting are two different things. I turned to face him directly. Son, I raised you to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, and right now you're not doing that. I'm trying to keep my family together, he said desperately. You on one side, Grace on the other. I'm trying to make everyone happy. You can't make everyone happy, Andrew. Sometimes you have to choose. And the fact that this is even a difficult choice, the fact that you're torn between your mother who sacrificed everything for you and a woman who's ashamed to be seen with you, that tells me everything I need to know about where your priorities are. Tears were streaming down his face now. I love her, Mom. I know you do, but love isn't enough. Not when it requires you to compromise your values, not when it costs you your family. We sat in heavy silence as the sun sank below the horizon. Finally, Andrew stood. I should go. Grace is making dinner. Of course she is. He started to walk away, then turned back. Mom, will you really come to the wedding? I met his eyes steadily. Yes, and when I do, everyone will know exactly who I am. After he left, I sat on the porch until full dark had fallen. Tomorrow was my meeting with Alex. We were finalizing the plan, and in 6 days, everything would change. I met Alex at a small coffee shop in Northeast Portland, far from downtown where we might be recognized. He was younger than I'd expected, 45, he'd said on the phone, but he could have passed for 40. Success agreed with him. He wore jeans and a casual button-down, but I recognized the subtle signs of wealth, the expensive watch, the quality leather shoes. When he saw me, his face broke into a genuine smile. Mrs. Mitchell. He stood and hugged me, and I was surprised by how emotional it made me feel. Please call me Ava. Only if you call me Alex. We ordered coffee, his black mine with cream, and settled into a corner booth. I've thought about this moment for years, Alex said quietly. What I'd say if I ever found you. How I'd thank you properly. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo. A beautiful little girl, maybe 6 years old, grinning at the camera. This is my daughter, Emma. She exists because you kept me alive long enough to get clean to build a life. Every good thing I have, my company, my family, my second chance, it all started with your kindness. My eyes burned with tears. I'm glad you made it, Alex. Now it's my turn to help you. He pulled out a folder. Here's what I'm proposing. For the next hour, we went over every detail. Alex had used his company's resources entirely legal. He assured me to compile a comprehensive file on Grace's background. Everything Patty had found, and more. School records, financial documents, employment history. The question is, Alex said, how do we use this information without being cruel, because I'm not interested in destroying Grace. I just want her to understand who you are and to remember who she was. Agreed, I said. This isn't about revenge. Good. Then here's what I suggest. His plan was simple, but effective. At the reception during the gift presentation, I would go up to give my gift. But instead of a wrapped box, I'd present the property deed and stock certificates. In front of everyone, I asked uncertainly. In front of everyone. But that's not all. Alex leaned forward. After you present the gift, I'll stand up. I'll tell my story, how you saved me, how you treated me with dignity when I had nothing. I'll establish your character in a way that no one can dispute. And then we show the photos, the ones from the Portland Rescue Mission. Not to shame Grace, but to draw a parallel. To show that you helped her too in her time of need. That you've been helping people your whole life, regardless of their status or wealth. I thought about it. It could backfire. Grace might feel ambushed. Andrew will be furious. Probably. But they need to hear the truth. And sometimes the truth is uncomfortable. What about Victoria? She won't take this lying down. Alex smiled grimly. I've done some research on Victoria, too. Her company has applied for a city development contract that my company is consulting on. If she causes problems, I have leverage. Alex, I don't want you to use your business as a weapon. I won't have to. Victoria Whitmore is smart enough to know when she's beaten. Once she realizes who you really are and who I am, she'll back down. I sipped my coffee thinking, there's one more thing. After all this comes out, I want to offer them something. The property and money. More than that, I want to offer Grace a chance to be honest about her past, to stop hiding, to stop being ashamed. I set down my cup. Because I understand her, Alex. I understand what it's like to be looked down on, to feel like you're not good enough. And I understand the temptation to hide who you really are. Alex nodded slowly. So this isn't just about revealing your wealth. It's about freeing her from her shame. Exactly. That's a pretty generous response to someone who tried to exclude you from your son's wedding. Maybe. But holding on to anger would only hurt me. I've learned that lesson the hard way. We spent another hour refining the details. Alex would handle the technical aspects, making sure the photos were ready to project if needed, arranging for the microphone during the reception. I would focus on my speech, on finding the right words. As we were leaving, Alex said, Ava, one more thing. I'm transferring $250,000 into your account. Consider it back payment for all those meals you gave me with 22 years of interest. Alex, no. It's already done. The transfer went through this morning. He smiled at my shocked expression. You gave me everything when you had nothing. Now I have everything and I want to share it with you. That's how gratitude works. Before I could argue, he hugged me again. Thank you, Ava, for everything, and for letting me be part of this. After he left, I sat in my car in the parking lot for a long time processing everything. In 6 days, I would walk into that wedding, and nothing would ever be the same. 3 days before the wedding, Grace called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Ava? Her voice was tentative, almost nervous. Do you have a minute? I'm listening. I just wanted to call and apologize for everything, for the way my mother spoke to you at dinner, for suggesting you skip the ceremony, for all of it. I said nothing, waiting. Andrew told me what you said to him, about choosing who he wants to be, and you're right. I've been selfish. I've been thinking about what I want, what looks good instead of what's right. Go on? Grace took a shaky breath. The truth is, I've been scared. Terrified, actually. This wedding, it's supposed to be perfect. It's supposed to prove that I've made it, that I'm successful, that I belong in this world. And having you there, she stopped. Having me there reminds you of who you used to be, I finished gently. Silence. Then, in a small voice, yes. Grace, can I tell you something? Okay. I know about your father, about the trailer park in Gresham, about how hard things were for you and your mother. I heard her sharp intake of breath. How did you? It doesn't matter how I know. What matters is that I understand. I understand why you changed your name, why you're so desperate to fit in with Portland's wealthy crowd, why you've built these walls around your past. I'm not ashamed, she started, then stopped. That's not true. I am ashamed. I've spent my entire adult life trying to become someone different, someone better, someone wealthier, I corrected. But Grace, wealth and worth aren't the same thing. I know that intellectually. But when you grow up wearing donated clothes and eating at soup kitchens, it's hard to believe you're worth anything at all. My heart ached for her. Despite everything, I recognized that pain. Your past doesn't define you, Grace, but hiding from it will poison your future. Trust me on that. She was crying now. I could hear it in her voice. I don't know how to stop hiding. You start by being honest, with yourself, with Andrew, with everyone. I'm scared. I know, but courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right, even when you're terrified. We talked for another 20 minutes. Really talked maybe for the first time ever. Grace told me about her father's arrest, about the shame that had followed her through school, about changing her name the day she turned 22. I wanted a fresh start, she said. I wanted to be someone nobody could look down on. And now I'm about to marry a man whose mother I tried to exclude from the wedding because I was afraid people would look down on me for being associated with a farmer. Grace, no, let me finish. I was cruel to you, Ava. I judged you for being exactly what I used to be. Someone working hard with their hands, someone without money or status. I became the thing I hated most. I became my father's wealthy friends who abandoned us when the money was gone. She sobbed openly now. Can you forgive me? Please. I thought about it. About all the hurt and anger I'd been carrying. About Eleanor's words. There's a difference between standing up for yourself and seeking revenge. Yes, I said finally. I forgive you. Really? Really. But Grace, I need you to understand something. I'm still coming to that wedding, and I'm still going to make sure everyone knows who I am. What do you mean? You'll see. But I promise you this, I'm not doing it to hurt you. I'm doing it to help you. I don't understand. You will. After the wedding, you will. We hung up shortly after that, and I sat on my porch feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Grace had apologized. Genuinely, I thought. That changed things. I called Alex. We might need to adjust the plan. What happened? I told him about the conversation. So she's remorseful, Alex said thoughtfully. That's good. It means she's not a lost cause. I still want to go through with the gift presentation, but maybe we can frame it differently. Not as an exposure, but as an offering. An offering of what, Ted? Freedom. The freedom to stop pretending. The freedom to be herself without shame. Alex was quiet for a moment. You're a better person than I am, Ava. If someone tried to exclude me from my kid's wedding, I'd be looking for blood. I was, for a while. But what's that quote? An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. I don't want revenge anymore. I just want my family back. Then let's make that happen. 2 days before the wedding, Victoria called. This conversation was very different from Grace's. Ava, she said crisply, no greeting. Grace tells me you two have reconciled. I want to make sure we're all on the same page before the wedding. What page is that, Victoria? The page where we all play nice for the cameras and pretend everything is fine. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Is that what you think this is, playing pretend? Isn't it Grace is marrying your son? You and I don't have to like each other, but we do have to coexist, for their sake. You're right about that. But coexisting doesn't mean I'm going to stay silent while you treat me like I'm beneath you. Victoria's voice turned icy. I don't know what Grace told you, but I've worked very hard to get where I am. I've earned my success, and I won't apologize for having standards. Standards? Is that what you call looking down on people who work with their hands? That's not... She stopped, recalibrated. Look, Ava, I know you think I'm some kind of monster, but I'm just trying to protect my daughter. She's worked so hard to build a good life. I don't want anything to jeopardize that. You mean you don't want anyone to remember where she came from? Silence. Vicky Palmer, I said quietly. That's who you used to be, isn't it? Before you became Victoria Whitmore. Her sharp intake of breath told me I'd hit my mark. How did you... It doesn't matter. What matters is that you've built your entire life on a lie. You've taught Grace to be ashamed of her past to hide who she really is. And now that shame is poisoning her relationship with my son. I taught her to survive, Victoria snapped. Do you have any idea what it's like to have nothing? To be looked down on by everyone, to watch your daughter wear donated clothes to school while other kids mock her. Yes, actually, I do, because that was my life too, Victoria. The difference is, I didn't let it make me cruel. I'm not cruel. You told your daughter I wasn't good enough to attend her wedding. You looked at me, someone who's lived almost exactly the life you lived, and decided I was beneath you. If that's not cruel, I don't know what is. Victoria was breathing hard now. What do you want from me? Nothing, but at that wedding I'm going to stand up and tell my story. And I'm going to show Grace and you that there's no shame in hard work. No shame in struggle. No shame in who we used to be. You'll embarrass her, Victoria said flatly. No, I'll free her. And if she doesn't want to be freed, then that's her choice. But I'm giving her the choice, which is more than you ever did. I hung up before Victoria could respond. Eleanor found me that evening sitting on my porch in the dark. Tomorrow's the rehearsal dinner, she said, settling into the chair beside me. I'm not going. Why not? Because Andrew didn't invite me. Grace did, but Andrew hasn't called. And I'm not going to force my way into another event where I'm not wanted. Eleanor was quiet for a moment. You're having second thoughts about the wedding plan, aren't you? How did you know? Because I know you, Ava. You're not a vindictive person, and the closer this gets, the more you're wondering if public humiliation is really the answer. It's not humiliation, it's truth. Sometimes truth and humiliation look the same. Eleanor took my hand. Are you sure you want to do this? I have to. If I don't stand up now, I never will. And Andrew will spend his whole marriage watching Grace and Victoria dictate who gets to be part of his life. And if it backfires, if Andrew chooses Grace over you? The question hung in the cool evening air. Then at least I'll know I tried, I said finally. At least I'll know I didn't go quietly. Eleanor squeezed my hand. For what it's worth, I think you're incredibly brave. Or incredibly stupid. Sometimes there's not much difference between the two. We sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one over my farmland. Tomorrow was the rehearsal dinner I wouldn't attend. The day after that was the wedding. And then, one way or another, everything would change. The morning of the wedding, I woke before dawn. I couldn't sleep anyway, so I made coffee and sat on my porch, watching the sun rise over my land. The early light turned everything gold, the fields, the old barn, the wildflowers growing along the fence line. This might be the last peaceful morning I had for a while. My phone buzzed. Text from Alex. Everything is set. I'll meet you at the hotel at 5:30. We got this. Another text, this one from Eleanor. You're doing the right thing. I love you. And one from Andrew, sent at 6 a.m. Mom, are you coming today? Please come. I stared at that last message for a long time before responding. I'll be there. I love you. The next few hours passed in a blur. I showered, dried my hair, applied makeup more carefully than I had in years. Then came the dress. I'd bought it specifically for this occasion, navy blue, simple but elegant, from a small boutique in downtown Portland. It cost more than I usually spent on clothes, but I wanted to look dignified. Worthy. The pearls came next. John's mother's pearls, the only jewelry I owned that had any value. At 4 o'clock, I stood in front of my bedroom mirror and barely recognized myself. I looked good, put together, like someone who belonged at a fancy wedding. But my hands were shaking. I picked up my phone and called Eleanor. How are you holding up? She asked immediately. Terrified. That's normal. What are you afraid of? I thought about it. That I'm making a mistake. That I'm going to humiliate Grace in front of everyone, that Andrew will hate me, that I'll destroy my relationship with my son for the sake of making a point. Do you want to back out, Nee? Did I even now? I could call Alex, cancel the plan, just sit quietly in the back row and let the wedding proceed without incident. But then I thought about Grace's voice on the phone. It's not like we'll have to deal with her much after the wedding. I thought about Victoria in that bathroom. I cannot have that woman at the nines looking like she just came in from milking cows. I thought about Andrew choosing $500,000 over me. No, I said firmly. I'm not backing out. This has to happen. Then hold your head high. Remember who you are, and remember that you're doing this out of love, not hate. Love. Yes, love for Andrew, love for the truth, and maybe even love for Grace, whether she deserves it or not. After we hung up, I gathered my things, my purse, my phone, and the manila envelope containing the property deed and stock certificates. At 5 p.m., I drove into Portland. The Nines Hotel occupied the top floors of the historic Meyer and Frank building in downtown Portland. The rooftop venue offered stunning views of the city skyline and Mount Hood in the distance. I arrived at 5:30 and found Alex waiting in the lobby looking sharp in a dark suit. Ava, he hugged me quickly. You look amazing. I feel like I'm going to throw up. That's adrenaline. It'll pass. He guided me toward the elevators. Remember the plan. I remember. And you're sure about this? I nodded. As sure as I can be. The elevator ride to the rooftop felt like it took forever. My reflection in the mirrored walls showed a composed woman in a navy dress. I didn't feel composed. The doors opened and we stepped into elegance. The rooftop had been transformed into something from a magazine. White chairs arranged in perfect rows, an arch covered in roses and greenery string lights crisscrossing overhead, even though the sun hadn't set yet. Waiters circulated with champagne. A string quartet played softly in the corner. And the guests. Oh, the guests. I recognized some faces from Portland Business Journal covers. Tech CEOs, real estate moguls. The kind of people who made decisions that affected thousands of lives. These were Grace's important guests. The ones I would have embarrassed. Several heads turned as Alex and I entered. I saw recognition flash on some faces they knew who Alex was, but they looked at me with curiosity. Who was this older woman on the billionaire's arm? Ava. I turned to see Jessica Grace's maid of honor rushing toward me. She looked genuinely happy to see me. "I'm so glad you came. Grace mentioned you might not, and I thought that would be terrible. You're Andrew's mother, of course you should be here." Her warmth surprised me. "Thank you, Jessica. I've saved you a seat near the front," she continued. "Next to Eleanor, she's here too. Eleanor came to. Grace invited her this morning, said she wanted you to have a friend here." Something in my chest loosened slightly. Grace was trying. Jessica led us to our seats, not in the very front, but not in the back either. A compromise. Eleanor was already there wearing her best dress and looking uncomfortable but determined. "You made it," she whispered, squeezing my hand as I sat down. Barely. The seats filled quickly. I saw Victoria arrive resplendent in cream and gold, playing the gracious mother of the bride. She saw me and her smile froze for just a moment before she recovered. At 6 p.m. exactly the music changed. The wedding was beginning. Andrew appeared at the altar with his best man looking handsome in his tuxedo but impossibly nervous. His eyes scanned the crowd until they found mine. When our eyes met, he smiled a real smile full of relief. I smiled back, my heart breaking and mending at the same time. Then the wedding march began and everyone stood. Grace appeared at the top of the aisle, and even I had to admit she looked stunning. Her dress was intricate lace and silk, her veil trailing behind her. Victoria walked beside her, beaming with pride. As Grace passed my row, our eyes met for just a moment. She looked terrified. I gave her a small nod. "It's okay. You're going to be okay." Something in her expression softened, and then she was past me, moving toward Andrew. The ceremony itself was traditional and beautiful. They exchanged vows that they'd written themselves, Andrew promising to support Grace's dreams, Grace promising to honor Andrew's family. That word family felt pointed, deliberate. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the crowd erupted in applause. Andrew kissed his bride, and they walked back down the aisle together, beaming. The hard part was over. Now came mine. The cocktail hour passed in a blur of champagne and small talk. I stayed close to Eleanor and Alex, grateful for their presence. Other guests looked at me curiously. Some recognized me from the ceremony as the groom's mother, but most seemed puzzled by my presence among Portland's elite. Victoria held court near the bar, surrounded by admirers, playing the role of proud mother to perfection. She saw me once across the room and raised her champagne glass in a mock toast, her smile cold and challenging. Grace and Andrew were surrounded by well-wishers, posing for photos, looking every inch the perfect couple. But I noticed Andrew's eyes searching the crowd, periodically landing on me with a mixture of relief and anxiety. At 7 o'clock, the wedding planner announced dinner. The reception space had been transformed into something magical. Round tables with white linens and towering floral centerpieces. Crystal chandeliers catching the last rays of sunset, floor-to-ceiling windows showing the Portland skyline bathed in golden light. I found my assigned table 8, not quite in the VIP section, but not relegated to the back either. Another compromise. Eleanor sat beside me with Alex on my other side. The rest of our table consisted of Andrew's college friends and their partners. "Mrs. Mitchell," one of them exclaimed. Brad, I remembered. He'd been to our farmhouse a few times during Andrew's university years. "It's so good to see you. Andrew talks about you all the time." "Does he?" I asked, surprised. "Oh yeah, he's always telling stories about growing up on the farm, helping you at the market. He's really proud of you." The words settled in my chest, warm and unexpected. Maybe I hadn't lost my son completely after all. Dinner was served salmon with asparagus cooked to perfection. I barely tasted it. My stomach was in knots. Then came the speeches. Victoria went first, standing at the head table with a microphone and a champagne glass. She looked radiant, confident, completely in her element. "Friends, family, and honored guests," she began, her voice carrying effortlessly across the room. "Today we celebrate not just a wedding, but the union of two remarkable young people who represent the very best of what Portland has to offer." She went on for 10 minutes about Grace's accomplishments, her drive, her success, about how proud she was of her daughter for overcoming obstacles and building a life of meaning and purpose. But she never once mentioned what those obstacles were, never acknowledged the poverty, the struggle, the shame that had shaped Grace's entire life. It was all sanitized, polished, false. "And Andrew," Victoria continued, finally acknowledging the groom, "we're so pleased to welcome you into our family. Your startup shows such promise, and we're excited to support your entrepreneurial journey." Support, with strings attached. The room applauded as Victoria sat down looking pleased with herself. Next came the best man, Kyle Andrews' business partner, with stories about late nights coding and dreams of changing the world. Then Jessica tearfully recounting how Grace had been the best friend anyone could ask for. Finally, the wedding planner announced, "And now we have a special presentation. The mother of the groom would like to offer a gift to the newlyweds." The room went quiet. I felt every eye turn toward me. Eleanor squeezed my hand. "You've got this," she whispered. I stood, legs shaking, and walked toward the front of the room. The wedding planner handed me the microphone, and suddenly I was standing before 200 of Portland's wealthiest, most influential people. Grace's face had gone pale. Andrew looked frozen, uncertain. Victoria was watching me like a hawk, her expression calculating. I took a deep breath. "Good evening, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Ava Mitchell, Andrew's mother." My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "I want to thank Grace and Victoria for hosting this beautiful celebration. The food is delicious, the venue is stunning, and I'm grateful to be here." I paused, looking directly at Grace. Although I'll admit there was a moment when I wasn't sure I'd be invited. A ripple of confusion passed through the crowd. You see, I'm not like most of the people in this room. I'm not a CEO or a business owner or a socialite. I'm a farmer. I sell organic vegetables at the Portland Farmers Market. Have for 23 years. I saw some guests exchange glances. A farmer, at this wedding. I wear muddy boots and I smell like tomato plants and I work with my hands 16 hours a day. To some people that makes me unimpressive, not worthy of being seen at an elegant event like this. Victoria shifted uncomfortably in her seat. But I didn't come here to talk about me. I came to give a gift. I pulled the manila envelope from my purse and opened it carefully. "Andrew, Grace, I know you're both starting your life together. I know Andrew's startup needs funding. I know you're planning to buy a house, start a family, build your dreams." I pulled out the first document, the property deed. "So I'm giving you this, the deed to the Mitchell family farmhouse and its 25 acres of land." Gasps rippled through the room. "The property is worth approximately $1.2 million. It's been in our family for 30 years, and now it's yours." Andrew's face had gone white. "Mom, no, I'm not finished." I pulled out the stock certificates. "I'm also transferring to you these stocks. Apple, Microsoft, Amazon purchased over the last 20 years. Current value approximately $1.8 million. The room was completely silent now. You could have heard a pin drop. "And finally, a savings account with $500,000 that I've been setting aside for your future." I set the documents on the table in front of Grace and Andrew. Total value approximately $3.5 million. Victoria's mouth had literally fallen open. Grace was gripping Andrew's hand so tightly her knuckles were white. "You see," I continued, my voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall, "I'm not the poor, embarrassing farmer some people thought I was. I'm just a woman who lived simply so her son could have security." I looked directly at Grace. "Grace, I know you didn't want me at this wedding. I know you thought I would embarrass you, that I didn't fit with the image you've worked so hard to create, and I understand why." She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "Because I know your story. I know you grew up in a trailer park in Gresham. I know your father went to prison for embezzlement. I know Victoria worked 3 jobs to put you through school. I know you changed your name to escape your past." Grace's sob was audible across the room. "And I know that when you look at me, at my muddy boots and my calloused hands and my simple life, you see everything you're trying to forget. You see who you used to be, and it terrifies you." I paused, letting the words settle. "But Grace, here's what I want you to understand. There is no shame in where we come from. There is no shame in struggle. There is no shame in working with your hands or living simply or needing help." I turned to address the whole room now. Every single person here has a story. Some of us were born with advantages. Some of us had to fight for every opportunity. But our worth, our true worth, isn't determined by our bank accounts or our job titles or whether we can afford designer clothes. My voice grew stronger. Our worth is determined by how we treat others. by whether we lift people up or tear them down, by whether we face our past with honesty or hide from it in shame. Before I could continue, Alex Thompson stood. Every head in the room turned toward him. Even in this crowd of successful people, Alex Thompson was someone special. A self-made billionaire, a Portland legend, a man whose company had revolutionized tech consulting. "Excuse me," Alex said, his voice carrying across the room. "May I add something?" The wedding planner looked confused, but I nodded. Alex walked to the front, standing beside me. "Most of you know me," he said. "Alex Thompson, CEO of Thompson Tech Solutions. But what you don't know is that 22 years ago I was nobody. Worse than nobody. I was a homeless drug addict living in Pioneer Square." Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. "I was 23 years old and I'd given up on life. I was waiting to die, basically. But every Saturday, this woman..." He gestured to me. "This woman gave me food at the Portland Rescue Mission." His voice cracked with emotion. "She never asked me why I was there, never judged me, never treated me like I was less than human. She just helped. Week after week, month after month. When I had nothing and no one, Ava Mitchell saw me. She treated me with dignity." Alex pulled something from his jacket pocket, an old faded photograph. "This is me in 2003. Homeless. Hopeless." He held it up. "And that's Ava handing me a container of food." The photo appeared on the large screens around the room, and I heard gasps as people saw the emaciated young man Alex had been. When I finally got clean and was accepted to a rehab program, I didn't have the intake fee. $500 might as well have been $5 million to me. Ava gave me her own money, her rent money probably. I didn't know it at the time, but she couldn't afford it. She gave it anyway. He turned to face the room fully. "That $500 saved my life. It got me into treatment. From there, I got my GED, went to community college, eventually Oregon State. Started my business with $1,000 and a dream." Alex looked at Grace and Andrew. "Today, my company is worth $1.3 billion. I employ 2,000 people. I'm considered successful by any measure. And it all started because Ava Mitchell decided a homeless addict was worth saving." He turned back to me, his eyes shining with tears. "So when I heard that someone tried to exclude this woman from her own son's wedding because she wasn't good enough, because she's just a farmer, I was angry, because the woman you look down on is the reason your CEO exists." Grace was sobbing openly now. Several guests were dabbing at their eyes. "Mrs. Mitchell doesn't need my testimony. Her character speaks for itself. But I wanted everyone here to understand this woman has spent her entire life lifting others up, helping people, treating everyone rich or poor, successful or struggling with kindness and respect." Alex looked pointedly at Victoria. "Some people build their success by climbing over others, by forgetting where they came from, by treating people they consider beneath them with contempt." Victoria had tears streaming down her face, her perfect makeup ruined. But the truly successful people, the ones worth emulating, are the ones who lift others as they climb. The ones who remember their struggles and use their success to help others. The ones like Ava. Alex handed the microphone back to me and returned to his seat. The room was completely silent. I took a shaky breath. "Thank you, Alex, for everything." I turned back to Grace and Andrew. "I have one more thing to show you." I nodded to the wedding planner who'd been briefed by Alex earlier. Images appeared on the screens around the room. Photos from the Portland Rescue Mission archives. Volunteers serving food. People in need being helped. And there a teenage Grace, maybe 16, wearing simple clothes, serving food with a genuine smile. "This is you, Grace," I said softly. 2013. You volunteered at the mission during high school. I found these photos in their archives. Grace stared at her younger self on the screen, fresh tears falling. "You were kind. You were generous. You saw people who were struggling and you helped them." More photos cycled through. Grace handing out blankets. Grace sitting with an elderly woman listening to her story. Grace laughing with other volunteers. "This is the real you, Grace. Not the person who wears designer clothes and networks with CEOs. This girl," I pointed to the screen, "this compassionate, generous girl who understood what it meant to need help. That's who you really are." The final photo appeared. It showed teenage Grace handing a food tray to someone, and in the background, slightly blurred but recognizable, was me in a volunteer apron. We were there at the same time, I said. I don't remember meeting you specifically. I served hundreds of people over those 3 years. But we were both there doing the same work, helping the same people. I walked closer to Grace's table. So you see, Grace, I'm not your opposite. I'm your mirror. I'm proof that you can struggle. You can work with your hands. You can live simply and still have worth, still have dignity, still deserve to be treated with respect. Grace stood suddenly, her chair scraping against the floor. She walked toward me, and for a moment I wasn't sure what she would do. Then she fell to her knees in front of me. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. You're right. About everything. I've been running from who I was, and I made you pay for my shame. I'm sorry, Ava. Please forgive me. I knelt down beside her, taking her hands. Oh, sweetheart, I forgive you. But more importantly, you need to forgive yourself. Andrew was suddenly there too, kneeling beside his bride and his mother, tears streaming down his face. Mom, I'm sorry too. I chose wrong. I chose money over you, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. Andrew, no, let me finish. His voice was thick with emotion. You gave me everything. You sacrificed everything. And the first time someone offered me money to compromise my values, I took it. I failed you. I failed the man you raised me to be. He turned to Grace. And I failed you too. I let my mother be treated terribly because I was afraid. I'm so ashamed. We're both ashamed, Grace whispered. She looked up at me, her face blotchy and tear-stained. I spent so long building this perfect image. Perfect clothes, perfect job, perfect life. But it was all fake. It was armor against feeling poor again. Against feeling worthless again. You were never worthless, I said firmly. But I felt worthless. My whole childhood I felt like I was less than everyone else, like I didn't deserve good things. And when I finally started succeeding, I told myself I'd never be that girl again. Never be poor Grace Palmer from the trailer park. She took a shuddering breath. But I went too far. I didn't just leave poverty behind, I left behind my compassion, my empathy, the part of me that understood what it meant to struggle. I became the thing I hated most, someone who looks down on others. You can change that, I said. Starting right now. Grace nodded, wiping her eyes. I want to. I really do. But I don't know how to stop being afraid. You start by being honest, by owning your story, all of it, the good and the bad. Andrew helped Grace to her feet, then turned to me. Mom, we can't accept your gift. The house, the stocks, the money, it's too much. That's your security, your future. My future is watching you build a good life, I said. A life based on honesty and integrity, not money and status. If this gift helps you do that, it's worth every penny. But $3.5 million is just money, Andrew. Important, yes, but not as important as family, not as important as doing what's right. I turned to address the room again. Most guests were crying openly now. Even the waitstaff had stopped serving and were watching the drama unfold. I'm sorry for disrupting your beautiful reception, I said. But sometimes the truth disrupts things. Sometimes we need to tear down the pretty facades we've built and look at what's really underneath. I looked at Victoria, still seated at her table, mascara running, looking more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her. Victoria, would you come here, please? She hesitated, then stood on shaky legs and walked to the front. Up close, I could see she'd been crying. I owe you an apology, too, Victoria said before I could speak. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Everything you said is true. About me, about where I came from, about how I treated you. She turned to face the room, her famous composure completely shattered. My name is Vicky Palmer, she announced, her voice growing stronger. 25 years ago, I was a cleaning lady. I lived in a trailer with my daughter and worked 3 jobs after my husband went to prison for embezzlement. Gasps and whispers spread through the room. I changed my name. I hid my past. I built a successful business, yes, but I built it on shame, on the belief that where I came from was something to be embarrassed about. Victoria's voice cracked. And I taught my daughter to be ashamed, too. I taught her that poverty was a curse, that struggle was weakness, that we had to hide who we really were, or no one would respect us. She turned to Grace. Baby, I'm sorry. I made you afraid of your own story. I made you think you had to be perfect or people would see through you. But Ava is right. There's no shame in where we came from. The shame is in forgetting. Victoria faced me now. Ava, you and I lived almost identical lives. Single mothers working multiple jobs, scraping by to give our kids a chance. But you did it with grace and dignity. You never forgot who you were. You never looked down on others who were struggling. She took a shaky breath. I did. I became exactly what I hated: people who judge others by their bank accounts. People who think money equals worth. And I'm ashamed of that. Victoria, I started, but she held up her hand. No, let me finish. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I was cruel to you. I tried to exclude you from your own son's wedding because I was afraid you'd remind people of who Grace and I used to be. I was a coward. Victoria knelt down. This powerful, proud woman actually knelt before me. Thank you for showing us what real strength looks like. Thank you for refusing to hide. Thank you for loving your son enough to fight for him even when it was hard. I helped Victoria to her feet, and then to my own surprise, I hugged her. We all do what we think we need to do to survive, I whispered. But we don't have to survive that way anymore. We can be honest. We can be free. Victoria clung to me, sobbing like a child. Around us, the room erupted in applause. Not polite obligatory applause, but genuine emotional standing ovation applause. People were crying, hugging each other, moved by what they'd witnessed. Jessica rushed up to us, wrapping Grace in a fierce hug. I'm so proud of you for being honest, she said. I've always known you were special, Grace. Now everyone else knows it too. Brad, Andrew's college friend, clapped him on the shoulder. Man, your mom is incredible. We've always known it, but damn, she just schooled everyone in this room. Eleanor appeared beside me, tears streaming down her face. Ava, that was beautiful. John would be so proud of you. Alex was there too. You did it, he said simply. You freed them. The reception continued, but it was different now. The formal, carefully controlled atmosphere had given way to something warmer, more genuine. People approached me throughout the night to share their own stories. A tech executive whose parents had been migrant farm workers, a real estate developer who'd grown up in foster care, a lawyer who'd lived in her car while attending college. It turned out that beneath the expensive suits and designer dresses, many of Portland's elite had their own stories of struggle. Stories they rarely shared, afraid of being judged. But my honesty and Grace's and Victoria's had given them permission to be honest too. This is the most real wedding I've ever attended. One woman told me, laughing through tears. Usually it's all fake smiles and showing off, but this actually meant something. Andrew found me as the evening wound down. The formal dinner had given way to dancing, and couples swayed on the floor to an acoustic guitar. Mom, can we talk outside? We stepped out onto a quieter section of the rooftop away from the party. The Portland skyline glittered below us, and a cool breeze carried the scent of roses from the decorations. I don't know how to thank you, Andrew said. For everything. For the gift, for the speech, for loving me enough to fight for me. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. Because I almost lost you. I almost chose money and status over the only person who's ever loved me unconditionally. He took my hands. Grace and I talked. We're not taking Victoria's investment. We're going to fund the startup ourselves, even if it means starting smaller, even if it takes longer, because we need to build our life on our own terms, not on compromises and obligations. Andrew, are you sure that's a big decision? I'm sure. And actually, Victoria agreed. She said she's been using money to control people for too long. She wants to change too. I glanced back through the windows to where Victoria stood with Grace, both women laughing at something Jessica had said. They looked lighter somehow. Freer. What about the house and the stocks? I asked. Are you still refusing those? Andrew smiled. Grace wants to talk to you about that. He led me back inside where Grace was waiting. Ava, she said, taking my hands. Andrew and I discussed your gift. We want to accept it, but with conditions. Conditions? We want to turn the farmhouse into something special, a community space. Maybe a farm-to-table restaurant where people can come and learn about organic farming, sustainable living, all the things you've spent your life building. Her eyes were bright with excitement. We could host workshops for people who want to start their own gardens. Maybe partner with organizations that help families in need. Honor your legacy by helping others the way you've always helped others. I was stunned. That's beautiful. And we want you to run it, Andrew added. It's your land, your expertise. We just want to help make it bigger, better, more impactful. And the money from the stocks, Grace continued, we want to use some of it to start a scholarship fund for kids like Andrew, like me, kids from struggling families who just need a chance. Tears were streaming down my face. You've really thought about this. I've thought about nothing else since your speech, Grace said. You showed me that success isn't about how much money you have or what designer labels you wear. It's about what you do with what you have, how you help others, the legacy you leave. She squeezed my hands. I want to leave a better legacy than shame and secrets. I want to be the woman you saw in those photos from the mission, the girl who cared about people. I lost her somewhere along the way, but I want to find her again. Then let's find her together, I said, pulling Grace into a hug. Andrew joined us, wrapping his arms around both of us. We stood there, mother, son, and daughter-in-law, holding each other as the party continued around us. I love you, Mom, Andrew whispered. Thank you for never giving up on me. I never could, I said. You're my miracle, Andrew, my greatest achievement. No, he said, pulling back to look at me. You're mine. The morning sun streamed through the windows of what we now called Ava's Kitchen, the newly renovated farmhouse that had been transformed into a community restaurant and education center. I stood in the commercial kitchen teaching a class of 10 people how to make preserves from scratch. Grace was at my side, her hands covered in strawberry juice, laughing as she showed a nervous student how to check the gel point. Just like this, she explained patiently. See, you'll know it's ready when it sheets off the spoon. She'd taken to farming and cooking with surprising passion. Every morning she arrived at 6 a.m. to help with the harvesting. Her designer clothes had been replaced with practical jeans and work shirts, and she'd never looked more beautiful. Through the kitchen window, I could see Andrew talking with a group of high school students, showing them the chicken coop he'd built. They were part of our youth program, kids from low-income families learning about sustainable agriculture. Eleanor was managing the front of house where we served lunch to a mix of paying customers and people in need. We had a policy no one was turned away for lack of money. If you were hungry, we fed you. Victoria appeared in the kitchen doorway carrying a tray of dirty dishes from the dining room. Table 7 wants to compliment the chef, she announced with a grin. I told them the chef is currently covered in strawberry juice and teaching a class, but I'd pass along the message. In the 3 months since the wedding, Victoria had become a regular volunteer. She'd even moved some of her business meetings to our restaurant, bringing clients here to show them real Portland. Not the glossy gentrified version, but the version built on community and connection. How's the lunch rush? I asked. Busy. We just served 50 meals, including 15 free ones. And we have reservations booked solid for the next month. Victoria's smile was genuine, reaching her eyes. Ava, this place is incredible. What you've built here? What we've built, I corrected. This is all of us. After the class ended and the students filed out carrying jars of preserves they'd made themselves, Grace and I sat on the back porch with cups of coffee. I have news. Grace said, her hand unconsciously moving to her stomach. I looked at her sharply. Grace? She smiled, tears in her eyes. I'm pregnant. 10 weeks. We found out last week, but wanted to wait to tell you in person. Joy flooded through me. Oh, sweetheart, that's wonderful. We want to name her Eleanor Ava Mitchell, Grace said. If it's a girl, Eleanor for your best friend Ava, for you, for the women who taught me what really matters. I couldn't speak. Could only hug her as we both cried happy tears. And if it's a boy, Grace continued, John Andrew, after Andrew's father and Andrew. Grace, that's perfect. We sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sun climb higher over the farm. In the fields, Andrew was showing the students how to check the soil pH. In the restaurant, Victoria was seating new guests. In the kitchen, Eleanor was prepping for the dinner service. It was chaotic and messy, and nothing like the life any of us had planned. It was perfect. My phone buzzed. Text from Alex. Heading your way with Emma. She wants to help feed the chickens. Save us some lunch. I smiled and texted back, always room for family, because that's what we'd become. Not just Grace and Andrew and me, but all of us. Alex and Emma, Eleanor, Victoria, the volunteers, the students, the people we fed. A family built not on blood or money, but on compassion and honesty, and the courage to be who we really were. Grace leaned her head on my shoulder. Thank you, Ava. For what? For not giving up, for fighting for Andrew, for showing me that there's no shame in my story. She paused. For saving me, basically. You saved yourself, sweetie. I just reminded you who you were. Who I am, Grace corrected. Grace Victoria Palmer Mitchell, daughter of a convicted felon, former trailer park kid, soup kitchen volunteer, now farmer teacher, and soon-to-be mother. She smiled, no longer hiding, no longer ashamed. All of it, the whole messy, complicated, beautiful story. That's who I am. I squeezed her hand. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of me, too, she said. And she meant it. Andrew appeared in the doorway, flour in his hair from helping Eleanor bake bread. Hey, are you two going to sit out here all day or help with lunch rush? He asked, grinning. We're coming, Grace said, standing and pulling me up with her. As we walked inside together, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the window. A 60-year-old woman with gray hair and laugh lines and hands calloused from decades of work. I looked exactly the same as I had 6 months ago. But everything had changed. I'd fought for my family and won. Not with money or power or revenge, but with truth and love and the courage to stand up for what mattered. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Alex. BTW Portland Magazine wants to do a feature on Ava's Kitchen. I told them you'd consider it. Fame and glory await. I laughed and showed the text to Grace and Andrew. Should we do it? Grace asked. I thought about it. 6 months ago, the idea of being in a magazine would have terrified me. Now, sure, I said. Let's tell our story. The whole story. Maybe it'll help someone else find the courage to be honest about theirs. To honesty, Andrew said, raising an imaginary glass. To family, Grace added. To second chances, I finished. We walked back into the kitchen together, ready for whatever came next. Because we were done hiding, done pretending, done being ashamed. We were exactly who we were meant to be. And that was enough.